Welcome back to Tied Up with the Morgans. Today we are going to be talking about this patch right here in front of me. These are ramps, also known as leeks, wild leeks, wood leeks. They have a lot of different names. Some people just call them wild garlic. Others call them spring onion. There's a lot of different names for them, but pretty much I know them as ramps. And the Latin name is Allium tricoccum. Okay, so ramps are what are considered a spring ephemeral. Now, what a spring ephemeral is anything that pretty much blooms or is going to come out before the trees leaf out, and it's short-lived. Not necessarily meaning it's going to die, but it will die back. It'll still be alive underground. So ramps are they bloom, they grow before the trees leaf out, which is right now, and they'll die back before summer typically. Really in early June, I would say mid-June. Around that same time is when they flower. They get a really cool flower. I think when people think of ramps, they don't always think of flowers. They just think of the culinary side of it, the foraging side of it, I should say. People like to eat ramps, but they don't always think of the flower. And it is a flowering plant, so that's pretty cool. Ramps are also known as a bulbous plant, meaning that it has a bulb underground in the stem where it's going to store its food during dormancy. It's also a perennial, so it's going to live more than 2 years. And I did say it is a flowering plant, and I want to include some pictures of this patch of ramps that I took last June. I believe it was June 13th is when it was like kind of at its peak, but mid-June is, I would say early June to mid-June is when you can expect it to flower. Ramps are a very popular non-timber product that people sell, also known as forest farming, which maybe you don't think of a forest when you think of farming, but there are a lot of forest farming plants out there, ramps being a big one. And this species in particular, like I said, is Allium tricoccum. Um, I know in the Midwest they have what's called Allium burdickii, and that is narrow-leafed ramp, but that is not common in my area here in Pennsylvania. Ramps are also one of the earliest edible plants to bloom in the spring. So that's another cool thing about these is there is not a lot of edible plants out right now, but ramps are one of them. So what do we use ramps for? Well, not everything has a use for us. Ramps, though, when you hear ramps, you probably think of food, like I would say everyone thinks of. If you think of ramps or leeks, you probably think of a nice, maybe a fancy dish at a restaurant. Leeks, I've had some very good potato leek soup and a couple of other things. I know they can make different vinaigrettes with it. I don't know much about vinaigrettes, but I know that people like stuff like that. There's a lot of other things though. There's even like ramp salt I've heard of, and different dressings and seasonings and mustards too. A lot of stuff like that, but I don't really do any of that. We have eaten them, Kate's cooked with them, but that's the extent of it. But there is a lot that you can do with ramps when it comes to food. So much so that there are actually ramp festivals in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, maybe even in Ohio. And I'm sure there's other places, but I just know those states in particular because I'm located here in Pennsylvania. West Virginia is close. But I know that there are ramp festivals that they have every year around this time of year. And there's different foods. You can buy ramps, just a whole lot going on. I've never actually been, but it sounds like a good time if you're into ramps. So that's something to keep in mind. One of the nicknames I mentioned was spring onion or wild garlic. That probably gives you an idea of what they taste like. They have a garlic or I should say an onion taste. I guess it depends on the person, but it's a strong taste, that's for sure. One thing that's neat is the whole plant itself is edible. Okay, so some people prefer the leaves, some people prefer the bulb, but all of it is edible, not just the bulb. The Native Americans ate them as well. They also used them for different remedies, like they used a lot of things, one of them being as a tonic for colds in the spring. Other tribes used them to treat worms. Some would crush them and put them in like a juice and put that on insect bites. There are a lot of vitamins and minerals in ramps that Native Americans who went all year long without vegetables used this as a way to start their year, if that makes sense. You know, there's not a lot growing, but this is the first thing that comes up that emerges in the spring. And so Native Americans were really looking forward to ramps for that reason. So where can you find them? Well, it's going to be in the eastern US, part of the Midwest as well. I can include a map right here actually that will show you where they grow native. And so you'll find them in a forest exactly like this. And what I mean by that is it is a deciduous forest. It is located towards the bottom, right? You're going to find them in the bottoms of valleys. Fertile, rich soil, which is exactly what this is. You know, a lot of decomposed leaf litter. You'll find them growing in shade, which is exactly like this because you have a lot of trees. You're going to find them growing among black cherry trees, tulip poplar, shagbark hickory. I mean, right here is a young shagbark hickory. Maples, right here is a red maple. A lot of black cherry here too. Not in frame, but we have some black cherry this way, right here in particular, and there's a few more back there. So you'll find them growing among those types of trees. Others, not in this specific site, but maybe near basswood or bitternut hickory, not just shagbark hickory, and in the understory. So not just the big trees, but down in the understory, you could look for blue cohosh, jack in the pulpit, and mayapple, which none of that's out right now, but the trees are probably the best indicator. And really, more than that, just know the type of forest you're in. You know, you're not gonna, I shouldn't say always, but you're likely not going to find these at the top of a hill. They like to grow in the bottoms. They like to grow near seeps, kind of like a moist soil when there's a lot of seeps here, as well as springs. So this is a very ideal location to find ramps. If I didn't know this patch was here, this is probably where I would look, along with any of the other, because our whole forest is made up of those trees on this property. So I'd kind of look at the bottoms of all of these valleys we have. So they grow in an ovoid conical shape. Okay, so ovoid, egg-shaped. And that leaf, if you can tell, is egg-shaped. Conical being cone-shaped, which again is exactly like the shape of these leaves. You'll find them in clusters of like 2 to 6 bulbs per plant. The leaves anywhere from 6 to 12 inches, but I guess it depends, you know, at what point of the year, right? Because a lot of these are still coming up. If you look right around here, there are ramps right there, just much smaller. So it really kind of depends on the time of year. And, you know, these ones, I guess, are older. So those are some things to keep in mind. So they are a flat, smooth, light green is exactly how I would describe them. The stems oftentimes are going to be like a red, purple color. Let's see if I can zoom in here. And you can see that purple colored stem. That's what the stems of a lot of them look like. As I try and look upwards here, you can see those stems right in there are red in color, almost purple. So you'll find that as well. And most of the time, the leaves are going to be in 2 or 3. It would be rare to find 4 leaves on one plant. And I don't know if I have found that, but as you look around, most of them are 2. Sometimes they are 3, or oftentimes they're 3, I should say. But 4 is pretty rare. So ramps work like all plants, where the leaves are working as solar panels, which is just capturing all of that sun's energy, but it then stores it in its bulb underground, which then transfers that into food to get it through dormancy. Because like I said, this is really not above ground for very long, pretty much from March to June, around there, and the rest of the year it's just all underground growth, or I shouldn't even say growth, underground, where all of that energy is being stored. If you need to identify these and you're unsure, the by far the most clear way is its smell. If you were to step on it, if you were to crush the leaf, it's going to smell like an onion or a garlic. Whereas its lookalikes will not have that smell. And this is very important, especially when foraging. And I mean, ramps I think are easy to identify, especially the stems really give it away, that purple red color. But we'll take a look here in a minute at lily of the valley. And they do look pretty similar. And the other thing is they come up at the same time. So while we have ramps right here, about 50 yards this way, we have a bunch of lily of the valley. And so if I didn't know what I was looking for, I could, and someone said there's ramps over in this part of the property, I could easily mistake the two if I didn't know what to look for. So one clear indicator would be that red, purple colored stem. The other would be the smell. So always know what you're picking before you eat it, because eating lily of the valley is not safe, and it will, or I should say, can make you sick. I should point out as well, not all of the stems will be that color. Sometimes they will be like a greenish white color, but in this patch in particular, they all have that red, purple colored stem, you can see. So that's a clear indicator. And again, the smell. One other thing I think that's very neat is that flower, it takes 5 to 7 years to produce that flower. So a 1-year plant is not going to produce a flower. And so not every single one of these in this patch produced flowers last year. Only a few did. But this is a pretty old patch. So if you take anything from today's video, I hope it's that you are cautious and you don't over harvest, is what I'm trying to say, because that is a very real problem with edible plants, especially ramps. They're known as a delicacy. They're used in fancy restaurants. People pay a lot of money for them. And when that happens, people will over harvest and take too much. And it takes a long time to produce these. It is not something that puts out tons of food and in a very fast, short time. It takes years, and they will eventually clone themselves over time, but it takes a while. And they do produce a seed, but it's 1 seed per berry, which each one will produce like 3 berries. So it's not a lot of seed. It is not like these are taking over. They can, if you let them, and if you manage them properly. So ramps can, I have heard of some giant patches. They can be aggressive if you let them. And what I mean by that is, you just aren't harvesting them, but also you're kind of like in this area here, we have Japanese barberry right here. We have multiflora rose. We have a lot of things that are keeping this in check. Those need to go, those invasives. I'd much rather a lot of ramps than those invasives, because these are not invasive. But keep that in mind. It's very easy whenever we get excited about something to take too much of it. And ramps, that happens a lot. People take too much of it, especially on public lands. So be responsible when you're harvesting, and know it takes a long time for these plants, for these patches to get as big as they are. So only take a little bit, have permission before you do it. And if it's your own land, then have at it. But just know, if you're not careful, you could wipe it out. So another thing, you could leave the bulb even. You could just take the tops. Or at the bottom of the bulb, there's little roots. I'm not going to dig any of these up right now. I might have some old video I'll include, but at the bottom of the bulb are roots. If you were to take that bulb, you can just put those roots back in the ground, and it will take some time, but it will come back. So those are some things to keep in mind. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the lily of the valley, I want to show you that. We have a patch right down here, and you see how they can look alike. All right, so I was wrong. My lily of the valley, which is normally right here, is not up yet, and I thought it was. But it typically does come in later, now that I think of it. So that makes sense. But really, the biggest difference would be the smell the color, and they grow a little differently. They look a little different. But I think that's it today for ramps. Let me know how you liked the video. Let me know if you had questions, if you had any feedback, or something I missed. I'm sure I did. There's a lot of things about ramps. I tried to keep it shorter. That's really hard to do. You could talk about plants forever. But I think that's it for ramps. So let me know if you have questions. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And I think that's it. But that is ramps. And if you were to ever harvest them, the way I do it normally, maybe I have some old video, but I just take like a little, I don't know what you call it, like a little gardening tool, right? And just get in there and hold the base, and you can just dig it right out very easily. They're not hard to dig out at all. Not going to hurt anything. But that's it. I don't have anything else. So we will see you on the next video, and it's getting to be the goats' dinner time. That's why they're a little loud right now. So they're waiting for me. I'm going to turn this around, and you can just see who's watching me. Luna. So we got a 3-leaved one right here. I know there's some 4-leaved as well. So they've been around. 3, 3, 2, 2, 3. I really think they are a really cool looking plant as well. Not only them being edible, but I love the way they look. And not much better than having some color when it's so brown. Unless of course the color is invasives, then it's not as fun. All right, so let's dig up a couple ramps. I will show you what the bulb looks like. Got a little gardening tool here, got some gloves, and let's see what we get. Okay, digging back here. Was not possible to film at the same time. But we got this just about done. Just about, huh? So in here, I kind of broke the bulb a bit. Clean it off some. So you can see. Here you go. You have the bulb. Looks like a new one is starting to grow. The stem and the leaves. So you can tell the bulbs are much smaller than, the onions we're used to using. But there is a lot of flavor in this little bulb. So there you have it. A very, very cool plant.